2 years ago, my husband and I went to Boise, Idaho for a Joe Rogan comedy show. We lived in Utah. Upon arriving, the only directions sent to us were the code to the front door and that he wouldn't be home. We pull up and the house is massive. We walk in and are kind of confused as to where to go. The pictures of the advertisement was a room in the basement with a bathroom next to it, so we went and settled in. The comedy show was that same night, so I hopped in the shower, and as I was getting out, my husband told me the host had messaged him and told him we were in the wrong room and to go into the room upstairs. Okay, but how did he know we were in the wrong room if he wasn't home? So we took our stuff upstairs and began looking around, trying to figure out which room. We opened a few doors and there were several bedrooms, but the only bedroom that had new towels and water bottles on the nightstand was the master bedroom. Still a bit confused, we put our stuff down and noticed all of the owner's stuff was still in the nightstand drawers, and closet was full of clothes and jewelry. Directly next to the bedroom was an office and a bunch of dog toys and bowls of food and water, but no dog. We were a bit confused, but the owner told us he wouldn't be home all weekend and to make ourselves comfortable. The night came and went, and we went to our show, explored some of Boise, and headed back to the house. We both kept telling each other something felt off, but didn't know why. We agreed to wake up and take our time getting back on the road and to our kids. Fast forward to the next morning, and we woke up to a dog running down the hallway and barks echoing throughout the massive house. My husband hopped out of bed and opened the door to see if someone was there, but saw nobody. We packed up super early and left way faster than we originally planned. It was super weird, like we were being watched and someone was with us the whole time. Airbnb in the 18th arrondissement of Paris. The place was a four-story apartment that I rented just for a weekend with a few friends. I stayed on the top floor, which was a converted attic with 2 beds and some basic accommodations. It never felt right being up there. It was dark, had no windows, and was just a bit claustrophobic. But I didn't think I'd mind because we weren't going to be spending a lot of time there. I couldn't get comfortable and couldn't fall asleep in that attic. It just didn't feel right. I was tossing and turning all night, spending lots of time staring at the ceiling. Around 4 a.m., I heard footsteps walking up the final staircase and the only exit, which led directly to the door of my attic room. The door whispered open, making a disturbingly quiet, crescendoing, high-pitched squeal. I don't think I would have heard it if I hadn't already been awake. It was dark, really dark, and I could barely make out the door slowly peeling open, as if someone was trying to sneak in. I stayed laying on my side and kept my eyes locked on the doorway as it continued to open until I called out thinking it was my friend trying to mess with me. No response, but the door stopped inching open for a second. I called out again and again and got no response, but then the door swung wide open, slamming against the wall, and I saw a shadow outline of a person, distorted by darkness and only illuminated from the window behind it, which looked out onto the streets of Paris. The figure started approaching me slowly. It was so dark in there that I couldn't make out exactly who was coming silently towards me, but I didn't wait to find out. Went full fight or flight mode and sprang up and out of bed, grabbing a nearby heavy lamp to use as a blunt weapon. My eyes must have been better adjusted to the dark than my evening guests, and I was able to keep my distance. I occasionally swung the lamp while moving in a skewed clockwise circle around the figure in the narrow claustrophobic attic as it approached me. After what felt like a few minutes but was probably a few seconds, I found myself with a clear path to the doorway and the subsequent staircase, so I threw the lamp at the intruder, breaking it with a shatter, and I flew down all 3 flights of stairs with so much energy I was lucky not to fall and hurt myself. I shook awake, my one friend, and said that crazy shit was going down upstairs. I looked back and the door to the apartment was wide open. I told him that I was fucking leaving right now and calling the cops and that he should join me. He did join me without a second thought. Both of us were in pajamas, and neither of us even grabbed our phones. We were trying to get out of there so quick. A few minutes later, my other friends arrived and told us that the place was all clear, but we were jerks for leaving the door open and trashing the place. We did leave the door open, but we did not trash the place. I did totally break a lamp though. I stayed at a lovely Airbnb in Iowa for my little brother's graduation. He didn't know I was going to make it, so we threw a surprise party at the Airbnb. While we were setting up, my other brother and I went down to the basement to get an extra table. The second we got down there, we looked at each other and said, "Yup, it's scary here." The longer I spent in the basement, the greater the feeling of dread grew in me. We found the extra table and headed back upstairs, joking about how creepy a seemingly normal basement was. While we were celebrating, my girlfriend decided she'd run the washer, which was downstairs. She asked me to go with her since it was creepy. Again, I went down and rushed to leave. The basement was now officially scary to me. Afterwards, my girlfriend and I were relaxing when the laundry buzzer went off. I looked at her and she said she didn't pick up the load from earlier. I thought it was strange that it hadn't beeped hours ago. We headed down to the basement. Again, she stopped at the stairs to the basement and asked me to go first. As I was going down, the buzzer on the washer went off again, scaring us. We both jumped, I hurried down and grabbed the laundry, and we headed upstairs to let it air dry. I should mention this was an oldish house, so the stairs were steep, and the bedroom where we slept was probably originally an attic. In order to turn on the lights upstairs, you had to flip a switch at the bottom of the stairs. When I flipped on the switch and headed for the stairs, I heard a loud banging sound like the sound of pots or something metallic clanging. I began to go for the kitchen where there was a knife, but then I heard the metallic whacking again at the top of the stairs. I turned to look against the now illuminated attic and saw a ceiling fan turned on to its max setting, and its mounting pole was making the sound. I ran upstairs and turned off the fan. We got ready for bed. I had dreams of seeing a shadowy figure out on the lawn. I woke up the next morning tired. I made my way down to the kitchen to brew some coffee. As I was turning around, I looked at the staircase to the basement. Something was wrong, and I don't know why, but I was drawn to the basement again. I looked down the stairs and walked down. I looked around and saw nothing. We had breakfast, packed our bags, and got ready to go. As we were doing one last sweep, I checked the kitchen one more time to make sure everything was in good shape. Just as I was about to say, "All good, let's go," that dumbed laundry machine buzzed. Both me and my girlfriend were just like, "Nope," and proceeded to get the fuck out. As we were leaving in a rush, I grabbed the bags and told my girlfriend to start the car. As I was leaving, the fan upstairs turned on again and began making the whacking noise. I've never bolted so fast out of a house. I texted the Airbnb host that the washer kept on making noises and that I couldn't figure out how to turn off the ceiling fan upstairs. They messaged back, "Thank you for staying with us." My parents and I were on vacation, and we were searching for a place to stay as soon as we got off the bus. It's normal for people renting rooms there to approach you and ask you if you'd like to rent a room, and soon enough, we were approached by this bald guy. That's the only thing I remember about him, the fact that he was bald and shady. I didn't have a good feeling about him, even though I was only a kid. So he comes towards us and starts talking to my already exhausted dad, who probably wasn't thinking straight at the time, and tells him he has a nice apartment nearby. We agree to go. My dad is carrying our stuff and walking parallel with the guy, and my mom and I are walking behind them. We enter this neighborhood and we pass a cafe. The waiter, a young guy of I presume 16 or 17, comes near my mom and I and quietly tells us not to go with the bald guy because he's up to no good. At this point, I was scared shitless, and my mom was worried, but we decided to check the place out anyway. We arrived at the apartment and there were a lot of stairs. When we finally went into the room, it was all stuffy and clustered and dark, bunker style. I remember the furniture being colorful but unsettling. He asked us what we thought, and my mom and I started protesting about it, saying we'd like to check out another place. He started getting weirdly desperate, telling us we wouldn't find a place cheaper, that he had other rooms, we should think about it, etc. His demeanor instantly changed from calm to frustrated and almost angry. My dad finally told him we wouldn't stay there, and we booked it out quickly. When we passed the cafe again, the waiter said that the guy had criminal ties. We got another apartment, thankfully, which was pretty nice for a 10-day vacation. But God, the claustrophobia and anxiety that overcame me when we stepped into that room is still real years later. I can't help but wonder if something happened there. I got to an Airbnb in Bumfuck Nowhere, Kansas at about midnight. The Airbnb was $12 for a night. The property was a quaint little house on some farmland, and I had passed the nearest house about a half a mile down the road. The host was already asleep when I got there, so I let myself in and made my way to the couch where I was supposed to sleep. It was eerily quiet and pitch black outside, and I was already nervous, so I couldn't get to sleep. The living room was decorated with all kinds of random artifacts and treasures. I was looking around and taking everything in. There were cool rocks and souvenirs, but most curiously, there were weird religious objects and books with cultish symbolism. I googled a word I saw on a tapestry, which turned out to be the name of the religion the host followed. The religion revolves around UFOs. The Bible they follow is basically just a categorization of hundreds of types of spaceships. I was a bit on edge after reading that, but after much research, I concluded that it wasn't a dangerous cult, just super weird. I also nosily read through a journal that was just sitting on a coffee table where the host had written things about her travels. One entry was about how she traveled to Peru and saw a spaceship. She wrote about how she'd never seen one that close before. It was all very strange, but I eventually got to sleep regardless. When I woke up in the morning, the host made me coffee and unprompted began telling me about her religion, among other conspiracies, like the government being able to control tornadoes. She was very kind and not overbearing, just eager to tell someone her truth. We talked for an hour or so before I got back on the road, and she sent me away with a bunch of stuff to research and an Airbnb magazine. Best Airbnb I've stayed at. A Florida woman abruptly ended her stay at a Kentucky Airbnb and was ordered to get a hotel room after she returned from a night in town and made an unsettling discovery. Laura Schilling flew into Lexington late last week for an equine competition with her daughter and 3 friends, and her mother when she first noticed something was off after they arrived at the rental, according to Fox 56. The front door was wide open and the glass storm door was closed, but despite being uncomfortable with the situation, she claims to have thoroughly checked the home before allowing the girls inside, she claimed on Facebook. She told WTQV it was her first time staying in an Airbnb. Schilling claimed that after being away from the property, they returned to find someone had unlocked the deadbolt on the front door, though they only used the garage to enter the Airbnb. Later that night when we returned, the girls hung out, and we got ready for bed around 11:30, she said. One of the girls came in and told me that her window was open. My mom and I went to find that both windows in their room were indeed unlocked and cracked open. Schilling realized that all the windows in the home had been opened in a similar position, even though they were sure all were closed when they left for dinner. But what happened next forced her to call the police. When I opened the window, there was a car that had been parked across the street with tinted windows. When I looked up and looked at their car, the car immediately started and took off, she claimed in the post. Fortunately, a deputy quickly came and scoped out the Airbnb around 11:38 p.m., but found no sign of forced entry at the rental. I feel like somebody was here to take the girls, Schilling told WTQV. I said, I feel like we could have woken up to something very different tomorrow morning. And he said, trust your gut. He said, I can't say for certain that that's what was happening. Police told the group to leave the Airbnb and find a rental for the remainder of their stay if they felt unsafe. The officer kindly stayed with them at the house while they packed their belongings and left the property to head to a hotel, Schilling wrote. The deputy felt strongly that we had been set up for someone to take the girls that night after we had gone to bed, she claimed. She explained to the Airbnb host, identified only as Rosanna, about the door being open the first night and the windows being open after they came back from dinner, alleged messages show. Oh my gosh, the host seemingly replied. The concerned mother claims she's contacted Airbnb about the incident but has yet to get any kind of result. There have been 148 offenses of breaking and entering in Lexington through January and February 2024, according to state-released statistics. Disturbing experiences and crimes while staying at home sharing services have become an ongoing issue over the years. It was a nightmare B&B. A woman jumped out of her skin after she allegedly discovered a camera in the bedroom of a Florida apartment that she'd rented via Airbnb. A video detailing the alleged spine-tingling find has almost 12.1 million views on TikTok, with viewers wondering if the owners were spying on people in bed. I tried to stay calm so we weren't losing our minds, but I was scared. Caitlin Boss, 22, told Jam Press of the incident, which occurred in June while she was staying in Miami with her friend Rachel Horman, also 22. We ban hidden cameras and have been supporting the guest as we investigate this allegation, Airbnb told the Post in an emailed statement. She and Horman had reportedly used Airbnb to book a stay in the city so they could research properties there as they were planning to move to the area. Their real estate recon went south after Horman reportedly discovered something sinister in the slumber quarters. I was out on a date while Rachel stayed at home in the Airbnb, Boss recalled. She was changing in front of the mirror and looked up and saw the camera in the light bulb. The social media manager added, "My friend freaked out and called everyone she knew, but when she called me, I thought she was being overdramatic." After her roommate kept calling, the exasperated Boss returned home to reassure her friend that it wasn't a hidden camera, only to be similarly shocked by the alleged light bulb cam. "When I saw it in person, it looked like a camera," recounted the aghast gal, who was petrified by the find. The camera was facing directly at the mirror, meaning you could see anything and everything we did. The aforementioned clip shows the supposed cam, which is situated in the socket of a bulbless light fixture. In the footage, Horman can be heard dialing 911. "Hi, we think our Airbnb has hidden cameras," she says in the clip, "and I feel like I'm being watched and I just do not feel safe in my Airbnb." The clip concludes with the officers arriving and inspecting the supposed spy cam, although one of the cops was initially skeptical. "The officers seemed annoyed to help us. We must have come across as some dumb young blondes being overdramatic," she recalled. But then another officer was very kind and agreed that there was a high possibility of it being a camera. Boss continued, "After we explained why we called them, they were very helpful and kind. The existence of a recording device has not yet been confirmed, and there was no further police action following the inspection." The video divided TikTok, with some viewers believing the device was indeed meant for peeping on sleepers. "OMG, update us PLs," said one commenter. "Can clearly see the lens in that." Another wrote, "That is definitely a camera." "Not me just leaving my Airbnb in Florida," said a third. However, others were skeptical, with one critic scoffing, "That's a literal light socket and wires, are you serious?" "Electrician here, it wasn't a camera," declared another, "just an empty fixture." other detractors ripped the duo for calling 911 over something that may or may not have been a recording device. Airbnb does not permit intentionally concealed recording devices such as hidden security cameras, per the site. The company also expressly prohibits security cameras or recording devices that are in or that observe private spaces like bedrooms, bathrooms, or sleeping areas. Boss and Horman have reportedly since contacted the rental firm's safety team, who are reportedly investigating this allegation, according to a company spokesperson. The duo have since been refunded in full and were relocated to a different property for 7 nights, which they toured in a follow-up video. The week was good, but it was so unfortunate because we had nowhere to stay for the remaining weeks, lamented Boss, who was still convinced the object was a concealed camera. Looking back, I think this was very traumatizing. We live in a sick world, and I'm not even surprised, she lamented. Airbnb is very convenient, and it's a shame that we had this experience. The traumatized woman added that she'd probably only Airbnb again if with a group. I'd rather stay in a hotel with security, said Boss, adding that she also bought a camera detector and I'm bringing it with me everywhere I go. After a long and exhausting journey, all you want to do is have a smooth check-in without any waiting. It's happened to all of us from time to time. You're ridden with luggage, exhausted, and you have to wait to enter your Airbnb. For some, it's annoying. For others, it's unbearable. On a particularly dreadful and rainy day in Washington, one guest arrived at the property only to find the key was missing. After some back and forth with the owner to find a solution, the guest insisted he'd find a way to enter the property and hung up. Not exactly what a vacation rental owner wants to hear. The guest decided to throw a rock directly through the glass of the back door to enter the property. After entering and perhaps thinking over his decision to bust through the door, he offered to pay for the replacement and went to cover it with insulating plastic the next day until the new glass arrived. A horror story with a happy ending. Guests can find some clever yet costly ways to enter a property when keys aren't readily available. Traditional keys are on the way out, and automated entry is the latest trend for reasons like this one. Luckily, Logify integrates with technology like check-in that allows you to automate your check-ins and pass off a virtual key to guests for entry from their mobile devices. No more lost keys or broken windows. Most hosts get into the Airbnb game to make a little extra cash. But what if guests have the same idea for your Airbnb? But let's back up. When this host rented out their Airbnb, apparently to a woman in her 60s looking for some rest and relaxation, they didn't think twice about it. But what turned out to be a fake Airbnb profile was the least of the host's worries after the guest checked out. When I arrived home, I found the bathtub with disgusting dirt in it. There were burn marks throughout my home where they had been burning sage throughout the house. I had burn holes in my tile, bathtub, and carpet. There were symbols drawn on my mirrors in the house, and weird stuff burning in a pot on the stove. They left money on the counter and empty boxes of spirit-bathing oils in the bathroom. Needless to say, I felt very uncomfortable in my home after that. A little digging, and the host found out that their guest was not a woman in her 60s, but a man who gets paid to conduct rituals in Airbnbs, apparently. Yikes.